So, welcome everyone. It's good to see all of you. Today we have a question. Let me see. Here we go. So Lian, she asks, practicing meditation and making all sorts of other positive changes in my life has brought me to a point of feeling calm and content most of the time. Yet I also feel that because of this, I've lost my desire and I'm struggling with defining dreams for the future. It seems like I'm struggling with the paradox of being content in the now and having desires for the future. No longer having these desires has left me feeling bored, and I am sad that it seems like I have lost my drive and passion. What's your view on this? All right. So generally, to the practice, there's always two aspects, two facets. And if you overlook one for the sake of training the other very strongly, then you end up being imbalanced in your practice. And this is a typical example of imbalance in your practice. Be content in the here and now, but there is no more growth. If it would be the other way around, you'd be stressed out with just trying to grow all the time, and trying to evolve all the time, and working really hard, but you never find rest. So we have to balance these two facets out very well. One facet is the facet of cultivation. The other is a facet of release. Okay? So what leads to peace and contentment and being at ease here and now is release. Releasing stress, releasing tension, releasing the future, releasing the past, releasing time, releasing space. Right. All that will make you quite peaceful, quite relaxed. There's no more needs, no more much desires, etc. But at some point you will feel maybe this kind of sort of boredom on the path. Like nothing is happening, and who will I be? Who should I become? These kind of questions will come to the foreground, and they will kind of disturb your peace a little bit. And so that is a clear sign you're drifting off to this one side. You're just only practicing for peace. You're just only practicing to let go, but not for cultivating, not for growth. In equal amounts, also you practice for peace, you want to practice for growth. So for such people, I would then put a heavy emphasis on evolution. Asking yourself the question, how did I evolve just now when I said? What has gotten better? That will usually take care of this. If you observe your practice in these terms, right? That you sit down and you focus on your breath, I don't know, for a little while. You become very, very calm. Many people forget to ask themselves, now what has actually improved? What exactly has improved? It requires a lot of sharp discernment to actually break through to this and understand what has improved. You have to be very observant. You have to really, really look at yourself in terms of where have I been, where am I now, where will I be? So we generally want to build three things. One is the body. You want to refine, upgrade, improve your physical energy, because it serves as the basis for mental cultivation. If your body is weak and sick and broken, there is no cultivation in the mind. It's very difficult to cultivate the mind if your physical life is totally out of balance. Like, take a real example, right? Like, you struggle to make ends meet. You've just lost your job due to the COVID situation. You don't have time to meditate. Your mind will be circling all around survival. It's a physical need. You want to survive, you want to make it. You will not have the leisure and the time and the calm to actually focus on spiritual cultivation because your body's needs are not met. If you're starving, for example, you will not have energy to practice meditation. Impossible. If you have no money, no health, these will have to come first. You'll have to fix these kind of things first. So you want to build up your body and your physical kind of reality, your physical life. As the first thing, this is the basis. This is why we put heavy emphasis on morality, on ethics, on, growing our conduct, improving our conduct, because a lot of things we do and say and think about in daily life, these are the very things which will end up making you stuck on the path of meditation. Say, for example, you lead a life in which you kind of would lie a lot or, steal from other people or pretend that you're someone that you're not. You will have to deal with all this in your spiritual practice. It'll come bubbling up and you'll be very confronted with it. But most people kind of don't know why they have such a hard time actually relaxing within themselves. It's because of our conduct. Always is. So we always start with the training of our ethics, our morality, our restraining the senses, not letting the mind and your perceptions and so forth run wild and go everywhere and just let it pull you around. But kind of exercising some discernment, some control and some restraint. Here, if I do those kind of things, I end up feeling really bad. Like if I drink a lot at night, I'll wake up feeling totally deflated and have a headache and all my health is down the drain and I spend hours or maybe days even just having to build it all up again. Is that very skillful? If I keep doing this on the long term, what will happen to me? That if I keep walking around and I cultivate this kind of public self versus the private self, like my public self is all nice and filtered and it looks good and it's happy. It's very common nowadays, right? But my private self is depressed, unhappy, feels really uncomfortable with itself. So desperately try to get some attention and affection from other people through displaying something that I'm not. If you don't address this kind of habitual acting in daily life, you will have to confront it in your meditation practice. It will become an obstacle, a hindrance. You will not be able to kind of get any deeper in your practice due to that. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they practice meditation, they would not address those things. They would filter them once more. They would say, it's all fine. I just release it. I just let it be. I don't do anything to it. It just comes and goes and it's just all awareness. And then they kind of develop these kind of views, right? Like everything is anyways, everything is mind, everything is awareness. I've just heard this amazingly inspiring talk of this and that Tibetan teacher or this and that Theravadan teacher, and they said everything is mind. So there is essentially no problem. Well, it's one way of putting it, but if you haven't really entered that truth, if it's just an intellectual kind of understanding, then it's an escape. You're escaping your responsibility in spiritual practice to grow. And unfortunately these days that's very common. A lot of spiritual practices on the rise which foster this kind of passive attitude. Just or you know, like kind of is like somebody that would go to take drugs just to get knocked out for a few hours and then come back into daily life. And daily life is kind of at odds with this whole taking the drug thing, right? So we have to learn to address these things, and that's why I keep always mentioning this is at the very base of good, correct spiritual practice is your conduct. What you do in the physical world with your physical words, your physical deeds, using your muscles, your body to, you know, manifest things. How can you improve that? And it's a lot of fun, because every day you can dedicate to growth. You have something to do. You could never be bored, because, you know, you could start a new exercise regimen that helps you to become a bit more healthy, more energetic. Maybe your body is too tense. Maybe you could relax it a little bit more. Maybe your body is too relaxed. You could put a bit more tension into it. And then immediately you feel better. You eat better, you sleep better. There's improvement, and it's nice. You could never get bored like that. And then you ask yourself, how deep could this go? How good could I actually feel in my body? Well, I don't know. I have no idea how deep this rabbit hole goes. But I know that it's possible to really expand physical health to a great extent, and well-being in your body, and good conduct, good actions, having good social life, for example. How much of a difference it makes if you are kind to people. How much of a difference it makes when you shift from complaining about the world to seeing what's good in it. It's very simple stuff, but makes a huge difference. The one path makes you a grumpy person. The other path makes you an open-hearted, happy person. And people like to hang out with open-hearted, happy people. I myself have a bit of a tendency to be more on the grumpy side. That's not very good. Like complaining about stuff, and I just actually did it. Complaining about current spiritual kind of problems, right? There's also a lot of good that we can learn from that. We can learn how not to do things. Instead, we can learn how to improve and do it better. For example, this talk right now is the result of seeing what doesn't work out. So you want to have a clear understanding of what does not work, so you can then find what works. Second point would be, the second change is the change of our emotional being, our emotional body. I consider that a different kind of body. It's a bit more refined than the physical body, and it has heavy interaction with the physical body. Cultivating your emotions. What could you cultivate there? How could we cultivate emotion? What kind of emotion is boredom, for example, as Leanne mentioned in her letter? Boredom is a type of feeling, isn't it? What could that feeling teach you? What's in that feeling? It's almost like a message that reaches you from the deeper states of your mind. It's almost like a dream. If you dream about being in a church, what does that tell you about you? What does a church mean for you? If you dream about getting stuck in a cave, what does that mean for you? These are like really profound images that come up from deep within yourself. They're like messages. Little bits and pieces of information that if you learn to read, if you learn to listen to these messages and read them, can be tremendously helpful on your path. So what's boredom? What kind of message is that? What's that boredom about? Ask it questions when it comes up. Why are you bored? Or wait for the answer. What would you answer, right? You ask yourself, you can write it down on a piece of paper. I'm bored because I'm not growing anymore. What else could you ask it then after that? If you received this answer, you could ask it other things, right? You can take it deeper and deeper until you understand, all right, that's what this is really about. Now I can address it, I can release it, and I can rebuild a more skillful type of approach. And as you release it, the energy that's trapped in your boredom returns to your being. That's the cool thing. This is what I think in Jungian psychology we call the integration of a shadow. That's not a heavy shadow. Boredom is not a very heavy emotion, usually. It might be connected to heavier stuff, but usually in itself, boredom is a kind of a mild shadow. But you can integrate it, the energy returns to you. Now you can use it for growth, for transformation. It's a really nice image, this image of a phoenix, for example. It burns and then it rises again. It's that kind of melting away of an old obstacle, but that old obstacle doesn't just burn away for good, it rises again then. And it rises again as a very beautiful facet, ideally in that path. You want to refine your approach and work on growing and evolution until that is not necessary anymore. You've reached the pinnacle. But determining early on in the path that you've reached the pinnacle is very unskillful if you haven't really reached it. If you are not enlightened, thinking that you're enlightened is not enlightenment. So you want to keep working up towards it. So refine your emotions. How could you become more kind? How inclusive is kindness, for example? Is kindness able to include boredom? And what happens to boredom when it enters the space of kindness? It's an interesting question, right? You can play with these kind of things. As your understanding deepens, you really understand the mechanics of your mind more and more, how it works, how it produces certain emotions and thoughts, how it releases them. And as your understanding grows, you'll be able to release larger and larger chunks and build larger and larger amounts of energy within yourself. And that is what will propel you to the island, as the Buddha calls it, like the island of nirvana or something like that. You need a powerful boat to get there. Then the third thing you can transform and work with and grow and evolve is your mind as such, the mental body. Now that's much more subtle than the emotional body. It's nothing to do with feeling anymore. You can't feel it. It makes it a bit more harder to discern it. In the mental body, there's things like intention. Intention, for example. Perception. Like various kind of motivations, like cravings that arise, like I want, I don't want, I like, I dislike, this kind of stuff. And of course, as all of these three bodies are heavily connected with each other, then you will immediately have a response in your emotional body. If you feel in the mind or you experience in the mind a wanting, immediately there's an emotional feedback to it. And immediately your body reacts to that emotional feedback and so forth. And then it goes back and forth. So refining the mental body all by itself, it's only possible through stillness. You need to enter a deep kind of stillness so that your physical body falls away, your emotional body falls away, and the mind is left. Now we're talking about very deep states of meditation. So this is where my expertise ends. So we don't go into that too much. But we have a lot of work already in stabilizing the mind. This is how you improve the mind as such. You want to stabilize it. Like keep it still, keep it centered. This is what we do when we practice breathing meditation, for example. You stabilize and you center the mind so that everything else which is not of the mind can fall away. And you can then hopefully experience the mind by itself on its own at some point. Not mixed in with the senses, not mixed in with emotions and so forth. Not mixed in with thoughts and intentionality, wanting, controlling, all that kind of stuff. Just standing by itself. So it's this refinement. Think of the spiritual path as that. It's an evolution or a refinement of all kind of aspects of life. Social life, private life, emotions, thoughts, your physical life, all that wants to be improved. Improve it. Make it better. And why? Now we come to the question, why would I do that? First answer is really simple, to benefit myself. It's good to benefit yourself. It's good to do something which will lift you up, make you more happy, letting go of suffering. But ultimately, if you benefit yourself, you can't help but benefit others. It goes hand in hand. So that's the other side of the coin. If you harm others, you harm yourself. Always. Always. Some people think they're clever. They're lying to someone because they can get some advantage out of it. But they hurt themselves in the long run. They hurt themselves. They wouldn't lie if they weren't hurting, first of all. So this perpetuates hurt. And a lot of things we do actually perpetuates hurt. It perpetuates suffering. It keeps it going. So learning to do a bit less of that and a bit more of the stuff that's good for you will eventually benefit everyone around you. And isn't that really nice? Think of it. Isn't that a really nice thing? Like wherever you go, that's where there is quality, that's where there is peace, that's where there is an absence of noise, of suffering, of problems. Like imagine you would be a person that just simply can't be offended. Wouldn't that be cool? You can't be offended. No matter what happens, you're not taking offense. That would be a great thing to teach to the people who cultivate this culture of outrage nowadays. Like everything you need to be outraged at. This is an outrage, that also is an outrage, and the left is an outrage, and the right is an outrage, and everything is difficult and problematic. How wonderful if people would not take offense. If they'd be cool and relaxed and allow other people to have ideas that are not the same ideas that I hold. So you have a multiplicity of ideas. They can all live, they are all allowed to be, and so we can have exchange and communication and a coming together and a building up. It's a bit more constructive than just cancelling out stuff, right? These are all very actual topics. So if we further things that divide and create hate and animosity and anger, first of all, we must be quite an angry person within and have a lot of animosity to be able to kind of further these kind of things. And it will be a huge obstacle on our path. We block ourselves with that. So that's all that comes to mind for today.